Okay, in today's video we're going to be using the finishing touch from Singer. What I'm going to do is show you how I'm going to be making these very small seam allowances for swimwear and undergarment construction. This is a 1 needle, 2 thread overlock, about just under a 2 mm seam allowance. This is a 1 needle overlock, no, one overcast. It's just 1 needle and 1 thread that goes over. Can't do this on the finishing touch because it doesn't have an option to disable the upper looper. So this one has to use the 2 loopers all the time. I'll probably try and figure out how to bypass that upper looper sooner or later, but not today. Then on this particular garment here, it is a 1 needle, 2 thread overlock, about a 2.5 mm seam allowance. And then on this particular garment, it's a type of flat lock. This is the inside of the garment. It's flat locked, it's folded over. Then on the front side, if you stretch it, you can see the ladder stitching. And this is done with the woolly nylon. Woolly nylon in the loopers. What I have my machine set up for is three on the needle. I go between 5 and 7 on the upper looper, and usually around 7 on the lower looper. That's been giving me my best results on just about everything. Now, what I have here is scuba knit, medium weight, probably 265, 275 grams per meter. And then I have my rightmost needle in, and I have my cutting blade as far in as possible so I can have the smallest seam allowance or hem as possible. Now, to start this type of seam in my machine here, I put my needle at the highest position, try and get my fabric all the way up to it as possible. That way the feed dogs can grab this particular type of fabric fairly easily. And then I'm using woolly nylon, so a good thing to do with woolly nylon is to go ahead and grab your serger tail and just give a little bit of a tug on it and keep a little bit of constant pressure. This is very helpful with lightweight knits. Not so much the scuba knit, but I'm going to try some other knits in a few minutes. That it will keep your machine from eating the fabric, because that's, a complaint a lot of people have is that my machine keeps eating the lightweight knit fabrics. This will keep your machine from eating it. If you grab the serger tail, just give a little bit of constant pressure on it. Now at this point, I'm going to complain about this on a regular basis. When you're done serging your seam, don't right at the end grab your fabric and go right to the left, pulling it as hard as you can, as fast, and tug. Every single video on YouTube, pretty much everybody does that. Stop doing that. You're warping your fabric and you're running the risk of bending one of your stitch fingers down there, or getting your looper out of alignment, or the easiest is you might bend or break your needle. But when you're serging, just finish off the serge and gently guide the fabric back. Let the machine feed out the the tail. And that'll also keep your finish here as square as possible. If you go and pull it right to the left as soon as possible, which everybody does because, ooh, I'm done with it, pull it to the left, you're going to distort your fabric. So stop pulling it to the left. Gently guide it with good follow-throughs directly back a couple inches. Don't worry, I'm going to be saying this probably 10 more times. But this is a little bit of a rolled hem. It's with the... But it's the hem I want on for like swimwear and undergarments. Still very stretchy. And I have my stitch length, which is the density here, at a little bit above 1. It could go a little lower, but I find that these home sergers don't really like to go much shorter than 1 on most fabrics. This is the exterior. And I'm using woolly nylon so it feels nice and smooth. Then this is the front part of the garment. You could see if you pull it, you could see a little bit of the needle thread. If you were to use a complementary or a matching thread, you really wouldn't see it. And let's compare this to one of the retail garments. This is the retail garment. You could see even on a retail garment, they sometimes have a little bit of space on their loopers, so it's not unusual if you have a little bit. But this is mine compared to them. I think I did a pretty good job of matching it. There's a stretchy. Mine is nice and stretchy. And that was on a scuba knit type fabric. Let me show you this on a t-shirt type fabric. This is probably a cotton t-shirt. Old t-shirt at that. And how I start this is I get my blade in its highest position. Lift up my presser foot and get it in there right under the blade as best as possible. That way you get your best chance of your serger feet to grab the fabric. Grab your previous serger tail. Give a little bit of a tug pressure. See, didn't eat the fabric. Follow through. See, even on one layer of fabric here, it didn't distort the fabric. If you were to pull it like everybody else does, it would end up looking like this. And how many times does your knit garment ending serger look like that? It's because you didn't follow through. You just got to the end and like, oh, I'm done. Wrong. So that's, and it kind of rolled the edge over. And here's the exterior. Now, this is about lightweight as I go on fabric around here. This is probably 125 grams per square meter. It's probably a cotton lycra, really thin. Kind of see through it. This is about as lightweight a fabric as I'm ever going to work with. I don't go with anything much lighter than this. And I'm not going to change any of the settings. Just going to go with what I have. Get my cutting blade in its highest position. Try and get my fabric under there as far into the cutting blade as possible. Position the fabric. Normally you would serge like this, but with these lightweight knits, you're going to have to pull this so it doesn't eat the fabric. So starting it can sometimes be a little bit troublesome, but I got it in there pretty good. It should start. And look, didn't eat the fabric. And this is very lightweight knit, didn't eat the fabric. Then after it's started, you really don't have to pull this, hardly, you don't have to really pull it. Then you can guide your fabric in like normal. See, even on this very lightweight knit, I only got a tiny little bit of distortion at the end. Versus if you would have pulled it, you would have gotten a lot of distortion. And as you can see, pulling on the front part just a tiny little bit like I did, it started perfectly fine right at the very front of the edge, didn't pull the fabric in. So pull your serger tail just a little bit, not enough to distort the fabric, just to give a little bit of pressure to help pull it through, and that'll keep your machine from eating your lightweight fabrics. Let's try this one more time. This would be on a very common sports fabric I use. This is a polyester spandex. I've been practicing for a couple hours, so I have a little bit of pieces of fabric of everything here. Line up your fabrics. Make sure your blade is in the highest position. Lift up your presser foot a little bit and get this all the way underneath the blade. All the way up as close to the blade as possible. Grab your serger tail to give yourself a little bit of pull. And you can see how well that started at the very front without pulling any of the fabric into the machine. Using this technique, I almost never, ever, ever have the machine eat fabric. Then this is the end. And see, since I followed through at the end, straight back and not yanking it to the left, nice square, no distortion on the end, even on a single layer of fabric. This is what I call my mini hem on this type of garment. This ended up to be about 2 millimeter seam allowance. On slightly thinner material, it'll be a little bit thinner, and slightly heavier, it's a little thicker. So this particular one at these settings gives me about a 1.9 millimeter to about a 2.3 millimeter seam allowance. Now we're going to try and do a flat lock on this one. You don't really have to change a lot of the settings. You have to go probably with a 5 on your upper looper, around a 7 on your lower looper, and then probably a 1.5, no, a 0.5 on your needle. Let's see if we can't get a flat lock out of this. And this is going to be a very small flat lock. Probably a lot smaller than what you'd normally make. Normally with flat locks you make them a little bit larger. Blade in its highest position. Get your fabric in there all the way up to the cutting blade. Grab your serger tail or serger chain. And the start came out pretty good. Did get a little bit of a loop not getting on the fabric, but that's fine. A little loopy here. Maybe could go up to 1.75 on the needle. Let's go ahead and pull this open and see how it looks. This is the front side, and we should get a small ladder out of here. Pretty good ladder, fairly even on the stitching. Could have done a little bit better job there. But on my garment builds where I'm going to be using this, I'm going to be using a matching thread, so this won't really show up that well. Then this folded over quite well on the flat lock here. Let's go ahead and go up to 1.75 on the needle and see if we can't get rid of these little loops here. Blade in its highest position. And with sergers, I don't care what brand you have. I've watched a lot of videos and I've come to the conclusion, never, ever, ever turn your wheel backwards. Always go forward when you want to go anywhere. The only time you need to go a little bit backwards is if you get a thread bunch up and stuff and you need to unlock it. You can wiggle it back and forth a little bit. But never backwards, especially never back a full stitch, ever. Always go forward. Still a couple little loops. Still did a pretty good flat lock. I'm not a real big fan of the flat locks. I don't really use it a lot, but just want to make sure I can go ahead and get one. It's nice and stretchy. Got to still have a few loops here. Not sure why. Let's go try one more. I've got the left the needle at 1.75. I'm going to go up to 6 on the upper looper and 7.5 on the lower looper. Might be a little tight. Let's have a little bit of loops on there. Flat lock went well.